You paid him already? General Vrth screamed, shielding his blistered face from a ceiling collapse. Who in the stars authorized the human? His aide, pinned under sparking debris, barely croaked out the words. You did, sir. 3 weeks ago. That was the moment the last surviving command bridge of the Triad realized they had not hired an assassin. They had invited a catastrophic force of nature with a contract. And now he was rewriting the warship's AI in real time, fingers gliding over an alien console like he was typing a lullaby. He didn't even glance at the explosion behind him. That was the hook. The rest was just Ferryman keeping his promise. 3 weeks earlier, the Galactic Triad had gathered in a climate-sealed war room orbiting the neutral gas giant MYR-9. Each of the 3 generals represented a vast military sector, naval, intelligence, and enforcement, and all 3 shared a problem. Governor Ator, a subordinate meant to control a politically unstable moon, had grown inconveniently ambitious. He was rallying rogue systems to reject central law. Worse, he had something that made him nearly untouchable: allies. Real ones. Rumors spread that Ator had weapon prototypes too advanced for any known species. Black market tech. Experimental stuff that jammed surveillance and killed in silence. Normally, the Triad would dispatch a fleet or assassins from within, but this time, discretion was critical. War was expensive. Scandal was worse. And Ator knew where bodies were buried, too many of them. That's when General Drox, the intelligence lead, cleared his throat and said something no one expected. He suggested they outsource the hit. Not to a rival faction or in-house killer, but to Earth. The room went silent. Earth had only recently gained interstellar contractor status. Humans were chaotic, emotionally unpredictable, and barely passed their second planetary war. But their Black Ops personnel were another story. Every species had heard whispers. Earth's assassins didn't operate by galactic standards. They didn't need armor. They didn't even need backup. One name kept recurring in hushed exchanges across mercenary boards and bounty forums. Codename Ferryman. No face. No confirmed origin. Just a file full of vanished targets and accounts that never blinked. General Saren scoffed at first. He hated human culture. Called it noisy. Called Earth a muddy ball of arrogance. But even he hesitated when he saw the dossier. Ferryman had taken out a Resolite death squad by flooding their entire orbital bunker with flash-frozen mercury. He once walked through a minefield with no boots and left the commanding general duct-taped to his own nuclear device. Drox assured them it wasn't myth. Ferryman was real. Expensive. And oddly formal. He didn't take jobs. He accepted contracts. Only through encrypted courier. Only once. If denied, he never returned. So they sent the offer. 2 days later, a metal cube materialized on the general's encrypted data shelf. Inside, a plain note with a single word handwritten in Dead Earth script. Accepted. Attached was a protocol list, drop zone coordinates, payment transfer conditions, and one chilling clause at the bottom. In the event of breach, deception, or false intel, the contractor reserves the right to fulfill the contract to its fullest interpretation. General Vrth chuckled when he read that. What does that mean? He'll kill extra? No one laughed with him. When Ferryman arrived, he didn't arrive through a shuttle bay or teleport. He simply stepped through a temporary gravity loop placed in their council chamber. 1 second the air shimmered. The next, he was there. Average height. Clean suit. No weapons visible. But his presence dropped the room temperature by 6 degrees. General Saren opened his mouth to speak, but Ferryman held up a hand, a tiny data disk between his fingers. The target. I require specifics. Name. Location. Affiliation. His voice was low. Detached. Like he wasn't really asking. The generals provided everything: coordinates, movement logs, last known bunkers. Ferryman slid the disk into a slim wrist device and nodded once. He turned to leave. General Drox, trying to lighten the mood, cracked a joke about refund clauses and what humans do when they fail. Ferryman paused just before stepping through the gravity's shimmer. Refunds are for unsatisfactory performance, he said without turning. You will receive full value. Then he was gone. That moment stuck with them. They didn't understand why. Until later. After his departure, Ferryman's arrival on the moon was never confirmed. Surveillance glitched. Motion sensors rebooted every 10 seconds. One of Itora's scouts caught a glimpse of a human-shaped blur moving through thermal distortion fields. That scout vanished 3 hours later, leaving only his boot in a tree canopy. Itor, sensing danger, locked himself inside his inner fortress beneath the capital city. He surrounded himself with his best guards, tripled encryption layers, and reinforced the doors with magnetic resonance seals. He felt safe. He wasn't. Because Ferryman wasn't a ghost. He was entropy on legs. He didn't climb through ducts or hack access panels. He reprogrammed the very shadows. Within 48 hours, Itora's guards were hallucinating conversations with dead relatives. Lights flickered even with backup cores. Static whispers came through shower vents. Then came the mirrors. Every hallway began reflecting images that didn't exist. One night, Itor looked into a mirror and saw himself hanging upside down, blood pouring upward into a grin. He screamed. That was the point. Ferryman never struck first. He dismantled sanity. On day 5, he entered the fortress without opening a single door. Itor was found bound and dangling, still alive, wrapped in shimmering wires that vibrated like a tuning fork. He expected death. Instead, Ferryman leaned in and whispered something that made his alien pupils dilate in pure confusion. You have Earth tech. I smelled it. Itor panicked. He confessed everything. The Triad had been stealing Earth's prototypes through a side-dealing black site. They reverse-engineered weapons. Sold them to local warlords. Even tried building a fail-safe AI using stolen Earth code. Itor had only skimmed a portion for personal use, but it was enough to make him a target. Ferryman walked away from the broken governor. He didn't kill him. Not yet. He contacted the generals. No hello. Just a single, encrypted ping. A countdown timer. 2 hours. They didn't understand what the countdown meant. Until the intergalactic news feeds lit up with the data leak from Itor's confession. Audio. Footage. Documents. All stamped with a single Earth symbol, the ferryman's ring. That's when General VRTH began screaming in the present. Back on the warship. Watching his command center burn. Watching all his fleet's encrypted servers go dark one by one. The screen flickered. Ferryman appeared briefly. Calm. No background. Just a close-up of his face. You lied about the mess, he said. Then the screen went black. And the refund began. Governor Itor sat trembling in his command chair, watching the playback for the 3rd time. His own voice, broken and panicked, echoed off the vault walls. The recording showed him confessing every detail: dates, routes, bribes, and stolen Earth technology pipelines, all under duress, dangling upside down like a trophy. The screen paused on his twisted face, eyes wide, mouth open mid-babble. He looked less like a planetary governor and more like a man caught in the middle of divine judgment. The worst part wasn't that he had betrayed the Galactic Triad. It was that he had trusted them. They had sold him out the moment he became inconvenient. And Ferryman? He had just pressed record. Ferryman had disappeared after that night, but he left behind more than fear. The virus he injected into Itor's vault systems had decrypted and auto-forwarded all secure transmissions to multiple locations. Now, dozens of planetary governments, news consortiums, and black market info brokers had access to damning evidence. Earth's weapons had been duplicated, twisted, resold to warlords, and even used in crimes against neutral species. The Galactic Triad's name was now synonymous with betrayal and stolen tech. Their diplomatic immunity crumbled within days. No one cared that it was Ferryman who had broadcast it. What mattered was who was guilty, and who had hired the assassin in the first place. Back aboard the warship Vexor Prime, General Saren had locked himself inside his private quarters, slamming his fists against the interface walls. His subordinates had gone silent. No one answered calls. He activated every AI command chain he had access to, but most returned an error message. The defense grid was offline. Their primary weapons dock was non-responsive. And the personal account holding the payout meant for ferrymen? Empty. Not just drained, but replaced by a taunting string of Earth standard binary code. It translated to the word receipt. Ferryman wasn't just punishing them. He was collecting. General Drox, meanwhile, had remained unusually calm. He sat in the data chamber surrounded by the flickering remains of the intelligence network he once commanded. Dozens of displays lined the room, all showing collapsing security feeds, sabotaged drone routes, and public protests erupting across their outer colonies. His face was unreadable, but his hands trembled slightly as he reviewed the original contract. He didn't want to admit what he had missed. At the bottom of the agreement Ferryman had returned with his signature was a clause that should never have been there. Not in a standard hit agreement. It was written in Terran legal phrasing, direct and sharp. In the event of deceit, breach, or concealment by the hiring party, operative is authorized to fulfill the contract to maximum scope, including auxiliary and reputational damage. It was signed not just by Ferryman but by an Earth oversight entity, DI Black. Drox had assumed it was just a bluff, maybe a formatting error. But now he realized it was a warning. Ferryman hadn't just accepted a hit. He had accepted justice. By the time the generals attempted to cancel the operation, the Galactic Contract Board had already been notified. A senior envoy from the neutral arbitration system arrived unannounced on a remote diplomatic vessel. He delivered a single message. The assassination contract had been altered due to Contractor discovery of internal corruption. Enforcement had shifted from personal elimination to systemic nullification. The Triad had no legal ground to stand on. The board recognized Earth's right to retaliate on any data breach involving sovereign weapons technology. The envoy didn't stay for tea. Down on the moon where Etor had once ruled, citizens now roamed free among the wreckage. Ferryman had triggered the release of all political prisoners held in underground cells. He had overwritten the surveillance drones to self-destruct in orbit. But he didn't stay for recognition. Witnesses claimed he walked out of the capital city's main tower just before sunrise, wearing a civilian cloak, hood pulled low, a ring on his finger flashing once before fading. No ship was recorded leaving orbit. No shuttle logs. He simply vanished again. The Triad, desperate to regain control, scrambled to draft a counter-narrative. They released statements blaming Ferryman for destabilizing a peaceful region. They tried to frame Earth as a rogue state exporting terror. But none of it held. The galaxy had seen the files. The voice recordings. The internal memos from their own systems. The narrative was already carved into the dataverse. The Triad didn't just hire a killer. They had stolen from the most unpredictable planet in the galaxy, and thought they could walk away untouched. Ferryman had begun his second phase. One by one, the Triad's external investments began crashing. Their shadow companies in asteroid mining started leaking payroll data to labor unions. Weapon depots exploded without a single shot fired. Internal sabotage from bots Ferryman had smuggled in as cleaning droids months ago. Embargoes were placed against Triad-owned transport fleets. Cargo bays were rerouted mid-warp into systems with pirate activity. Even their personal credit streams were being rejected, flagged by banking networks as pending investigation. Every time one of them tried to use their emergency identity masks or planetary getaway codes, the result was the same. Access denied? General VRTH, once the loudest, now sat in silence aboard the crippled warship, watching the stars through a cracked viewport. His uniform, once pristine, was stained with soot and desperation. Ferryman had never once appeared in person since the warship incident. He didn't need to. His presence was in every system glitch, every data leak, every whisper among the lower ranks. Soldiers had started deserting. One even left behind a note that simply read, "We trust the ferrymen more than you." That hurt worse than the sabotage. The Triad called an emergency session in an isolated bunker within the Dead Zone sector, a place with no digital interface and no AI access. A return to analog methods. They had to discuss what no alien leader ever wanted to admit. They were out of options. General Saren proposed one final attempt: locate ferrymen through Earth. Beg for negotiation. General Drox vetoed it instantly. Contacting Earth would be seen as weakness. Worse, it might confirm that the Triad had no control anymore. They argued for hours, unaware that the room had already been bugged. Ferrymen had slipped a device into the walls through a courier drone days before. Everything they said was being archived, sent straight to a live relay channel in Earth's Black Ops intelligence network. Meanwhile, ferryman sat quietly in a cargo bay on a freighter disguised as a medical relief ship. He was cleaning a tool, half blade, half signal disruptor. He didn't need to move fast anymore. They were already unraveling on their own. The final stage was near. The refund was just beginning. And no one asked what came next? Because the answer was already echoing through the systems they used to command. Collateral. The first colony to revolt wasn't even strategic. A farming world called Hyro 4, barely on the grid, best known for exporting antifungal roots. It had no warships, no alliances, and barely any functioning satellite defenses. Yet, when the Galactic Triad's logistics team tried to dock and offload supplies, they were met with a crowd of citizens holding pitchforks, modified welders, and homemade signal jammers. A banner hung from the tallest building, a crudely painted ring with a single word underneath: Refund. The logistics team turned around. That footage made it to 10,000 comm feeds across the outer rim. Within 2 days, 17 other colonies refused Triad entry. A week later, 3 of their own internal sectors demanded independence votes. The refund wasn't just political. It had become symbolic. And ferrymen had said nothing. Not once. General Drox watched from inside his panic suite as the financial data flowed in, each report worse than the last. Every investment portfolio tied to Triad Holdings was collapsing. Cargo fleets they once leased out to neutral traders were being avoided like plague ships. Their AI encryption firm, once considered uncrackable, was publicly blacklisted after ferrymen exposed its backdoor code. The word was out. The Triad didn't just fail to vet their assassin. They had betrayed humanity's trust and then gotten caught. And the galaxy was reacting accordingly. Ferryman wasn't just fulfilling a contract. He was burning their entire legacy to ash. Desperation made the Triad reckless. General VRRTH reached out to a private firm known for countering high-level human operators. The firm accepted the bounty on Ferryman's head, promising results in 72 hours. They sent a 5-man strike team composed of elite shapeshifters, psychic tacticians, and 1 ex-human mercenary. None of them returned. 1 drone captured a glimpse of their fate. A still frame, looping endlessly. All 5 suspended midair, upright, completely frozen in a spatial loop. Around them, graffiti glowed on the walls in an ancient Terran dialect. 4 words. Refunds are non-transferable. General Saren tried diplomacy next. He deployed a press statement across 50 systems, painting ferrymen as a rogue agent who had betrayed their peaceful intent. But no one listened. Not after the leak from Earth's DI Black Division surfaced. The document verified ferryman's contract as fully authorized and triggered only by deception. Worse still, the statement came with a time-stamped annex showing payment acceptance by the Triad's own encrypted line. There was no out. No escape hatch. The Triad had signed away their fate. And ferryman was executing the fine print line by line. It wasn't long before the bounty flipped. Small planets began offering resources not to kill ferryman, but to protect him. He was seen as the galaxy's balance, a necessary ghost who only appeared when corruption reached cosmic proportions. Children painted rings on their windows. Old soldiers refused deployment. Pilots sabotaged their own ships to avoid launching on Triad orders. Across the stars, ferrymen had become an idea. And the Triad had become a joke. The old fear they once commanded had turned to mockery. They were the fools who hired Earth's wrath. Somewhere in deep orbit above a neutral moon, Ferryman sat inside an abandoned mining station, watching it all unfold. He said nothing. His posture never shifted. He simply monitored transmissions, filtered threats, and uploaded packets of corrupted data into the networks that hadn't failed yet. He didn't smile or gloat. He wasn't driven by vengeance or emotion. This was work. The job was not to kill 3 corrupt generals. It was to eliminate the weight of their influence. Permanently. Not just in politics, but in thought. Their very presence was a system bug. And Ferryman was the patch. The final blow came from a place they never expected. Earth. An official diplomatic envoy arrived in a cloaked ship above the Triad's remaining operational base. They didn't ask for permission. They landed directly on the platform and demanded an audience. General Drox, the only one still deluded enough to believe in negotiation, agreed. The envoy arrived unarmed, a middle-aged woman in a plain gray suit with no military rank or insignia. She introduced herself as Agent Valen, liaison to Earth's Interstellar Peace Commission. She placed a single data slate on the table. On it were classified files, each one verifying the existence of a hidden partnership between the Triad and Earth's exiled war profiteers. Files showing experimental tech lifted from Terran battlefields. Images of Earth's dead soldiers stripped of gear by Triad scavengers. Schematics of failed clones built from human DNA. The room fell into silence. Valen didn't blink. She simply spoke one line that froze the last breath in the general's lungs. You didn't just steal tech. You stole our dead. Then you sold them. General Saren stood up and attempted to leave. Valen remained seated. She activated a command on her wrist, and the entire platform went dark. Backup lights flickered on. Every escape pod had already launched. Every weapon vault was sealed. External doors fused. The station was now a tomb. From the darkness, a familiar voice echoed. Calm. Measured. It came not from a speaker but from the metal itself. A resonance. Ferryman had patched his voice through the walls. You asked for silence? So I gave it to you. The lights returned only to reveal the absence of the envoy. Valen was gone. The slate remained, its screen now displaying a single countdown. 8 minutes. A digital virus had been embedded deep within the Triad station systems, hidden inside the very contracts they'd tried to erase. Ferryman had known their tendencies. He had embedded the trigger inside their own purging script. In attempting to wipe evidence, they had armed their own erasure. Outside the station, the stars pulsed gently, unaware. Inside, the generals screamed at hollow consoles, inputting override codes that had already been corrupted. The timer hit 0, and nothing exploded. Instead, the system ran a full personality scan on each general. It uploaded the results, flawed, broken, self-obsessed profiles, into every news feed and social net across 50 galaxies. Their thoughts. Their corruption. Their crimes. Raw. Unfiltered. Public. And then silence. The lights dimmed. One by one, the war systems they once controlled went dark. The last image any of them saw was the shape of a ring, etched slowly into their primary display by unseen hands. Not a threat. Not a warning. A receipt. And below it, a new clause, written in the same Terran script they had once mocked. No returns. No mercy. Zero balance. The chaos didn't end when the Triad fell silent. In fact, that's when the galaxy started listening. News channels no longer speculated. They simply reported Ferryman's name in cautious tones, as if saying it too loudly might summon him through the console. Colonies that had once been silent out of fear now spoke freely. Triad governors were overthrown in waves, some by protests, others by quiet disappearances. Entire military installations powered down out of panic. No one knew how many of Ferryman's viruses remained dormant in their systems. He had planted them so deep and so elegantly that even neutral AI maintenance crews refused to dig. They feared waking something up. Something human. The public didn't ask who Ferryman was anymore. They asked who had created him. What kind of planet could produce a man who didn't demand ransom or broadcast threats? Who didn't seek applause? Who simply delivered consequence? There were rumors, of course. Some said he was bred in Earth's lunar labs during the post-war experiments. Others whispered that he was a failed peacekeeper who had once watched an entire city burn because of political protocol. A few believed he wasn't human anymore at all. That Earth had made a machine, taught it justice, and let it roam. Earth said nothing. That silence, more than anything, confirmed his legend. Within the diplomatic halls of neutral space, the remaining leaders from various systems convened in emergency sessions. The topic wasn't whether the Triad deserved it. That was settled. It was what came next. Ferryman hadn't just destroyed a faction. He'd rewritten how consequences could work. Until now, power meant immunity. The rich could hide behind protocols. The corrupt could bribe and spin and erase their pasts. But now a man had come through a loophole in galactic law and held the mighty accountable without war, without chaos for its own sake. Just results. Clean. Surgical. And terrifying. The heads of the Intergalactic Compliance Board voted unanimously to begin an audit into every faction that had dealt with Earth in the past decade. None resisted. Every faction wanted to be seen as clean. As untouched. No one wanted to be the next target of a refund. Earth, for its part, remained passive. Its diplomats offered full cooperation, smiled politely, and always used the same phrase whenever Ferryman's name came up. He is not ours. He is contracted. The board suspected the truth. That Earth had created Ferryman not as a weapon, but as a mirror. A single man designed to show what happened when arrogance met consequence. Meanwhile, Ferryman had returned to the shadows. His name no longer showed up in active logs or communication intercepts. His last confirmed transmission had been a single ping received by Earth's diplomatic outpost orbiting Zephyr V, where a backup of the Triad's black market dealings had been stored. That storage core vanished shortly afterward. No explosion. No hack. Just a message on the server log. Cleared. Then silence. Earth never confirmed what the message meant. But the systems that had once held stolen Earth tech began to fail, one by one, across every black site. But not everyone feared him. In pockets of the galaxy, he became a strange sort of symbol. Artists carved his ring insignia onto walls. Pilots painted it beneath their cockpits. Not as worship, but as warning. His story became a tale mothers told to ambitious children. If you ever think you can take without answer, remember the refund. Military academies rewrote protocol training, adding ferryman clauses to their ethical combat modules. Entire war doctrines were adapted to consider what might happen if another like him existed. But they all missed the point. Ferryman didn't exist because Earth wanted him to. He existed because the galaxy allowed corruption to grow so vast that it needed one man to undo it. Still, one thread remained untied. General Saren. The last known member of the Triad to survive beyond the collapse. He had escaped before the station's data purge, jettisoned in a stealth pod with forged credentials and a new face. He had surgery performed by smugglers in the outer zones. Changed his voice. Bought a new identity. Hid on a remote moon and lived as a minor tech merchant. For 6 months, no one found him. He believed he had escaped. He even started to laugh again. Sometimes he looked at his old reflection and whispered, "I'm still here." And then one morning, the power in his outpost blinked. Just once. Barely a flicker. But it was enough to freeze him mid-step. He checked every system, found nothing wrong. But he didn't sleep that night. Nor the next. The third night, his security drone caught movement outside. He accessed the cam feed, heart racing. It showed only dust. Then it glitched. A single frame. A shape. Human. Wearing a plain cloak. Standing still in the wind. When the feed resumed, it was gone. He triggered every alarm, every defense. They all responded late. Not broken. Just slowed. A half second too slow. He didn't wait. He ran. He reached the underground launch pad and fired up his emergency ship, eyes darting over every readout. Everything seemed fine. Too fine. As if nothing was out of place. As if someone had already been here and tidied up. That's when he noticed the ring. Not the symbol. A physical ring, sitting neatly on the ship's control console. The metal was earth-forged. It wasn't engraved. It was scorched. As if someone had pressed it into the fire, then laid it there to cool. He picked it up with shaking hands. Inside, etched so finely it could barely be read, were 4 words. "You're the last receipt." He didn't leave the planet. He never got the ship off the ground. The outpost exploded 2 nights later. No survivors. No forensics. The only record of the blast was an automated weather drone that logged a sudden burst of heat and wind. Then silence. Back on Earth, the message queue at DI Black received a final ping. Packet origin untraceable. Its title was simple. Refund complete. Across the stars, those who had watched the fallout began to change. Corporations restructured. Politicians erased shadow projects. Whole fleets recalibrated their loyalties. Not because they were righteous, but because now they knew someone was watching. Someone who didn't file reports or ask permission. Someone who didn't care about excuses. He didn't demand answers. He gave them. Ferryman was never meant to fix the galaxy. He was the debt collector. And the balance was now 0. The chaos didn't end when the Triad fell silent. In fact, that's when the galaxy started listening. News channels no longer speculated. They simply reported Ferryman's name in cautious tones, as if saying it too loudly might summon him through the console. Colonies that had once been silent out of fear now spoke freely. Triad governors were overthrown in waves, some by protests, others by quiet disappearances. Entire military installations powered down out of panic. No one knew how many of Ferryman's viruses remained dormant in their systems. He had planted them so deep and so elegantly that even neutral AI maintenance crews refused to dig. They feared waking something up. Something human. Long after the final broadcast, long after the flames of the Triad's empire had cooled to embers, the galaxy settled into an uneasy quiet. No one dared to fill the vacuum. No one rushed to claim the title of supreme authority. Power had been proven temporary. Influence had been proven fragile. What mattered now was perception. Not just of strength, but of legitimacy. Everyone knew the rules had changed. The galaxy had seen what happened when those at the top believed they were untouchable. And somewhere in that darkness, Ferryman watched. Or didn't. No one could be sure anymore if he was even alive, or if the figure had become something else entirely. A myth with muscle. A warning with a pulse. On a distant moon where clouds scraped the rocks like fog, a lone figure arrived at a forgotten outpost. The building was ancient, carved into the cliffside, marked with symbols no modern species could read. Inside, the walls flickered with failing lights. Dust choked the air. And at the center of the chamber stood a vault. Not for weapons, not for wealth. It was for names. The vault housed the original ledger, an encrypted list known only to Earth's deepest intelligence core, stored in fragments across the galaxy. Here was one of them. The figure approached it, gloved fingers brushing across the keypad. Without hesitation, he entered a code. It wasn't a number. It wasn't even a word. It was a silence. The door opened, revealing not data but a chair. A single chair facing a screen. The screen blinked once. Then twice. And then a list appeared. Not long. Not full. Just partial. But enough. The ledger of pending debts. Not monetary. Moral. Political. Galactic. Some names glowed red. Some had question marks. A few had been crossed out already. One name at the top blinked until it dimmed. Saren. Cleared. Ferryman didn't speak. He didn't need to. He sat in the chair and stared at the screen, waiting for the next instruction that would never come. Not because he lacked orders, but because he didn't follow them anymore. The contract was over. The refund was processed. But there was always someone else. Back on Earth, whispers began in diplomatic halls. A junior analyst from the orbital court submitted a strange request. She wanted to know who had authorized the ferryman protocol. The request never made it to review. Her inquiry was flagged, redirected, and dissolved before the sun even rose. But the woman never let it go. She gathered fragments. Stories. Code trails. Odd payment anomalies. Encryption keys that traced to dead ends but always looped back through Earth's original war archives. In one discarded memo, she found a phrase that had been scrubbed from all official records. Emotional reset conditioning. She looked deeper. Found mention of a program. A soldier who had volunteered after the siege of Terith. A man who had lost everything and asked for something to be built where grief had lived. She found fragments of footage from the siege. In one frame, a soldier stands alone in the rubble, unarmed, blood on his hands, staring straight at a fleeing convoy. His face was blank. Too blank. She took the footage to her superior. He ordered her to drop it. She didn't. So she vanished. Her case file marked her as reassigned. But no one ever saw her again. 2 months later, a new encrypted file appeared on the desk of the Earth ambassador to the Galactic Board. It had no source tag. It played only once. The footage showed a small outpost, one that had been declared offline for over a decade, powering on. Inside, a man in a chair stared at a screen of names. No face. Just a silhouette. And then a single message appeared on the feed. Awaiting imbalance. The ambassador never mentioned it. He burned the file, memory core and all. But he never slept the same again. Elsewhere in the stars, wars slowed. Treaties were signed faster. Corruption still lived, but it buried itself deeper. And above all else, the smart ones kept their hands clean. Not because they feared exposure, but because they feared acknowledgement. Ferryman never targeted political rivals or military officers just doing their job. He targeted arrogance. The kind that made rulers think suffering was just a side effect of leadership. Those were the names that blinked red. Those were the debts that never disappeared. And as long as one of those names still lived, the screen would never go dark. Then came the surprise. A private shuttle, registered under a defunct mining company, landed quietly on a neutral planet known for its sanctuary status. No one exited. No signal was broadcast. Just a small capsule placed at the foot of the Planetary Council's steps. It bore no threats. No signature. Only a ring, once worn by ferrymen, resting atop a folded sheet of paper. The paper read in perfect galactic common, "Refund complete." Not a warning. Not a promise. A closure. But was it? The moment the ring was examined, something triggered. In the hands of a forensic diplomat, it revealed microscopic engravings invisible to normal scans. A second list. Smaller. Newer. It wasn't about the past. It was about the ones rising next. Corrupt corporations, military alliances posing as peacekeepers, diplomats with personal war fleets. The new generation of deception. Ferryman hadn't vanished. He had simply moved forward. On a ship without a name, traveling between abandoned warp lanes, a man stood alone at the edge of a training chamber. He wore no insignia. No armor. Just a shirt and boots, dust-covered and practical. In his hand was a small device, shaped like a coin, pulsing softly. He looked down at it, then tossed it onto the console. A voice echoed through the ship, low and synthetic, requesting confirmation. The man didn't answer. He simply walked to a terminal and tapped once. A list appeared. Not red. Not green. Just blank. He had cleared it. But the universe had a way of refilling the void. Another request had just been submitted. A high-ranking colonial officer had falsified troop loss numbers to protect trade status. 300 dead. Erased from record. Ferryman didn't sigh. He didn't grow angry. He simply selected the name. The request turned green. The ship changed course. No alert. No fire. Just a shift in direction, subtle and silent. Somewhere across the galaxy, a corrupt man raised a toast, thinking himself clever, protected, invisible. He didn't know that his account had been marked. He didn't know that somewhere in the shadows of the stars, the refund had already been approved. And the balance was about to shift again,